All right, new format, super casual. I'm just gonna talk into the camera. Didn't bother clearing out the background. The only thing that I've done is make sure that I am filming in what's left of daylight so you can see everything clearly. Gonna be taking a look at every leverless controller that I own, from my least favorites to my favorites. Basically, these are fighting game controllers that remove the joystick, but still keep like arcade style buttons, so you get access to all those buttons at your fingertips. Let's take a look. Okay, starting from my least favorite controller, this is the Fightbox Mini. Not to be confused with Fightbox, which is basically a company that started as selling a more budget version of hitbox controllers, which is, you know, the original leverless. I really like some of the aesthetics on this. This actually originally came with a Starfield theme, kind of like that fake NASA space punk aesthetic, and I replaced it with kind of like an ocean theme. But you can tell I don't really use this thing because I snatched some of these keycaps, these ocean themed keycaps, for another controller, and I never replaced them because I never use this thing. It's just, this was one of the first kind of like keyboard style leverless I bought, and you can see it's got like a floating keycap switch. You know, it's not inset in there, it's just kind of on top. I do like the buttons, I do like the function buttons up here, but it's just too cramped, and that's going to be kind of like a theme for some of the controllers that I don't like. This kind of layout is too cramped. If you're going to get something like this, I would strongly recommend getting something like a little bit wider, from like just from like an ergonomics perspective. This is really going to start cramping you out. It was fine for like playing like Grand Blue on like my lunch breaks and stuff like that, but other than that, like, I really will never revisit this controller. So at this point, you've kind of got like a little bit better options. Next on the list is the Keybox Arcade Maverick. Now this is a 3D printed handmade controller from Europe, I believe they're based in, and they were kind of before the big leverless boom with the GP2040 CE firmware that basically made everything like super cheap to get basic console compatibility and PC compatibility with. Before that, they were already making like these keyboard style leverless, and I always wanted to get one, especially the mirrored version. But they recently came out with this version, which is, it looks gamepad shaped, but don't let it deceive you. This is not a gamepad sized. It is not a SNES controller sized controller. You're not going to be using your thumbs to play this like a D-pad. I really wanted one of these for a long time, but unfortunately it is kind of disappointing. The finish on it is not amazing. It's kind of creaky, and like the seams are not perfect on here. The finish on the most of the keycaps is fine, and I kind of like, they have like a kind of polygon design on top of these buttons, but it's really cool, and you can customize like the colors of every one of the buttons, but it's, the functionality wise, it feels kind of a little bit archaic. One of my huge problems is that they have this second button here that you're supposed to use for like another jump button, like the hitbox style jump button. So, but these two buttons are always mirrored. So whatever you map this to, this one's going to be mapped to, and vice versa. So it kind of limits the function of it. Like, what I like to do with these style controllers is have this as an independent movement, and have these buttons as like left and right triggers, so I can kind of hold them down while I am pressing the other buttons. And you just can't do this on here, and it feels kind of like a backward step. Still, they are on sale right now, and they're like 40 bucks if you're in Europe and you want something like super customizable in terms of colors and stuff. Might be an okay option, but personally, I would probably pick something else, you know. Next on the list is the Cosmox Hot 42. I don't know, their branding is really confusing. They need to figure out what company they are. But you've probably heard of these guys. Hot 42 is basically the huge seller of leverless controllers. They got like every month they come up with like a new leverless controller to test out, and they recently came out with like a PlayStation themed edition, like an unofficial PlayStation themed edition of this. I really like the build on this. It's a injection molded plastic, and the buttons feel pretty good, easy to slide on. I love that they have like these custom made function buttons with like the different shapes for the start, select, and turbo buttons, so you can kind of differentiate them. And they even have like a tiny little lockout switch up here. Unfortunately, I don't really use this controller. One thing is the plastic on this is really prone to scratches. If you kind of look up here, I have not been using this controller. I don't like put it in a bag or anything. Like occasionally I've used it in the past and just like threw it in my bag or stuff, but usually it just kind of sits with my other controllers. And just taking controllers in and out, like I've got scratches all over this thing. So it kind of feels cheap on that side, and it is cheap. It's like 50 bucks or something. And the buttons and the spacing, I'm going to say this again, it's a little bit cramped, like finger to finger on my hands. It's like ring finger to ring finger on my hands in terms of spacing. So I can't even like lay, like you kind of have to like bend your wrists in like this to play on it, and it's not really comfortable for me. It's just big enough for lap play, so if you have smaller hands than me, you want to just like get something really basic, that's fine. But again, like these things have been evolving in such a fast pace that I with just like the basic 8 buttons and basic hitbox style movement keys, I feel like there's still a lot of better options even at this price point. Okay, the next two I kind of have to talk about together. This is the Hot 42, I think B16. It's their keyboard style one with like 16 keys. There's a lot of fucking keys on this thing. And also I got the Doyo KBGM, I don't know, some number. They got some Sony ass naming scheme for these things. These are basically the same controller. These basically have the same or similar layouts. Oh, let me flip this upside down. You can see they got that WASD style movement, duplicated buttons down here, kind of split layout, and then 2 extra buttons. The difference is these just kind of move them off to the side of the main 8 action buttons. And here we have one here, kind of in the middle bit of the first 2 punch and kick buttons, and then a smaller one down here. By default, this comes as just all square key switches, like basically the same thing as this. What I've done is I just took bigger size keycaps and just put them on there, small enough that they're not going to really wobble that much. The one that really is wobbling though is this one here. You can see this is 6 keys instead of 8. That's because I've taken out one of the key switches and replaced it. That one's a little wobbly because obviously there's not a switch under it. It doesn't really line up so that you can put 2 switches on top of it. Personally, I just like having like a big pinky key rather than like 2 small pinky keys. That's my thing. Again, this is a floating key switch design, kind of like that Fightbox one, but I think this one, by the nature of having more keys and the way its spacing is, the way that it's spaced, you can kind of replace the keycaps with like bigger ones, and that definitely makes it better. Especially I find for like the WASD ones, since your finger is traveling as opposed to just, you know, being on, usually you have your fingers here and your thumb is doing the work on like a hitbox kind of layout. WASD one, you kind of have to like move up. This gives you like a bigger target for that, and is, I found personally, like, oh, like I love that. That makes like the keyboard style experience a lot better for me. But this is cheap, but it's got kind of like a basic design, acrylic sandwich design, kind of the build quality like you see at this price point. But I've done a lot of customization on it, and that's what I like about it. But the amount of stuff that I have bought for this probably like doubled the price of the controller, so I don't consider that like a huge plus. It's just I'm this kind of person who needs to build my personal aesthetic into everything. Also, I think I lost one of the screws on the back. Yeah. I don't know where it went. That's the problem with these kind of sandwich designs. Like, it's easy to strip the screws or like lose one or something. They're easy to find, but you shouldn't have to. Again, this is like the same thing, but it's like in a metal shell. It's got a clear back where all the LEDs come up. So the LEDs kind of shine through here. It comes with clear ones. Clear keycaps by default. I replaced them all with Evangelion styled ones because I'm just a big nerd. But the frosted plexi on the frosted plastic on the bottom, it looks really nice with LEDs. The build quality is really nice. You get this screen, which I really miss on the B16. It's like incredible for like checking your buttons and checking what button profile you're on, because I always use like a ton of profiles. And again, the advantage of this is like you can play all kinds of games with this. Like with these controllers, I have played like Slave Zero X and like beat 'em ups and shmups and stuff like that. And I find them really good for that. You can fucking play 3D games if you really want to. Like, you could feasibly play Devil May Cry 4 by, like, mapping this to the left stick, and then just these two, like, modify for the D-pad and right stick camera controls. And then all these buttons, you would just use, like, keyboard buttons to do your actions. But you have your thumbs here that you can hold down while you do other actions. If you want, like, the high-end aluminum construction version of the B16, this is it. You know, the build quality is a step up, but you lose something in customization. But they're all running the same firmware so far, so, you know, in terms of features, they're all pretty customizable. All right, next we're going to take a little detour into building your own. Like, so this is a leverless controller that I just built on my own. All it is one of those like little artist cases that you see with like the cheap art supplies that somebody might buy you for Christmas or something as a kid. I just took that, I emptied it out, I glued well, I didn't glue it, but I used adhesive PCV feet to stick the PCB to the bottom of it, drilled some holes in it, and stuck my buttons in it. These are cheap buttons that you can buy anywhere, AliExpress, Amazon. And these are Quan button, standard arcade size buttons. And on the side here, oops, I seem to have, on the side here I've drilled holes for the plug, the USB plug, and some extension ports that you can add additional buttons to. This is a great way to make something cheap, and the advantage is you can make it in whatever fucking layout you want. This is my S2 engine layout that I've explained in some other videos. I really like it. The advantage for me is you get the WASD style movement buttons and the extra jump button, and then similar to something like this where you have these thumb buttons for the triggers. They're right here next to your jump button. And if you're not using this jump button, you can switch to a different profile where it becomes an extra button. I use it in like when I'm playing like Ninja Gaiden to like be the D-pad or the camera controls. Like you just hold it down and then you can press the different buttons over here to change the camera or to do D-pad shortcuts. The advantage of this, pretty cheap. Make it in any layout you want. Style it in any layout you want. Make it out of anything you want. The disadvantage is you have to be handy with tools. So, you know, that's like not a real option for like a lot of people. Just they don't have the space or the tools or, you know, the experience. But, you know, I would say give it a shot. If you've ever built like a computer or something like that, you know, a little bit of woodworking or, you know, anything like that, you can make it. It's like, it's easier than you might think. And there's a lot of good resources for that now. Next up is the Fightbox R1, I believe it's called. This is specifically there's two versions of this. There's one that is a all metal case, and there is another one that is this flat acrylic sandwich style one. It's basically just like a bigger version of this. And if you're wondering why there are so many goddamn buttons on this thing, well, this thing is basically a Smashbox or box or rectangle style controller for Smash Brothers Melee, Ultimate, and all those other kinds of platformer fighters. The movement keys are here, modifiers here, start button here, A button is down here, as well as surrounding for the C-stick directions. And then these are your action buttons. So basically like a GameCube smashed down into an acrylic sandwich of a controller. By default, I really don't like the mappings on this, but it comes with, I believe it's either Pico Rectangle or hitbox firmware, which allows you to change it. And now Gram Control have also come up with an application that allows you to do it through a web interface as opposed to just like doing the onboard firmware shortcuts. This is an okay option for this. I've replaced the switches here with silent switches. I think they're like Fairy silent switches, Akko Fairy, I think. The ones that they come with are like a box white switch, I believe, which are a little bit heavy for what it is, but this is like 150 bucks. And this kind of controller has been like really in demand for Smash Brothers and Smash Melee, and it's been kind of hard to get. And this is like just a nice budget version of that, that you can kind of customize a lot. You can get it with an acrylic plate, or you can have the art printed directly onto the acrylic, which I think is a great feature. They still use these like Chicago screws over here that they strip down so easily, and it's such a pain. But underneath, it's just running, just like all these other boards, it's running like a Raspberry Pi Pico, basically. So you can flash it with whatever Smash compatible firmware it is, or you can flash it with GP2040, and which I have done before, and then you can get some more controller profiles. It's a little bit, the one thing I will say is it's a little bit troublesome because this is kind of designed just to be a GameCube controller, and it only has enough buttons for like a GameCube controller. So that means it's missing some like function keys for like the share button, the start, select, share, and like that kind of stuff. So it's a limit. So you're going to start having to put either giving up action buttons or adding weird shortcuts to get like the home button or something, you know. This is okay. This is an all right choice for if you wanted a cheap Smash style box controller. Or you can also use it for fighting games. You can easily remap this thing for fighting games if you think like you looking at all those other levers lists and saying 16 buttons is not enough, I need a lot more. You can do that, and like I've remapped these keys here to like be the right stick, so like you can play World Tour or get into a lobby and actually have camera control. So it's nice to have the extra options even if you don't use them. All right, next up is the Fightbox Gen-5x, I think it's the Fightbox F6 Gen-5x. It runs the Brook Gen-5x next generation PCB, so you can play it on Xbox and PS5 natively, and it has a well, it has analog sticks on it, which I've added these analog stick toppers to it, so you can use the left and right stick independently of this is the D-pad here, and then you know you got the major 8 here. I like this one. I by default it comes with like just really basic keycaps, and these are just Sanwa buttons. These are the default ones. I've replaced them with like these like little fairy tale themed ones, so you can kind of see this one here, and just custom ones. And I added these joystick toppers to make them, to give it a little bit more height. It's got a nice full metal shell with an acrylic top. By default, the acrylic top is just all black, which is kind of a pain since you can't put any artwork on it. I think that you can put one that is clear on it, so you can put artwork underneath, but what I've done is just I removed that and used some wallpaper and stuck it to that and cut out the holes to kind of give it my own aesthetic. I think it's a little bit limited in terms of its button layout. I would have liked to see thumb buttons down here. You're gonna hear me say that a lot. I would like to see thumb buttons. because those would just make it so much easier to hold down triggers when you're doing like 3D games. Like for fighting games, this is fine, you know. I'm not a huge fan of this outside of 3D games, like the arrow keys. I usually use the hitbox style layout for fighting games, but this is fine. You know, it's perfectly fine. The switches it comes with, I think, are white, or not white, black switches, like cherry black or cherry red switches, I think. They're okay. I replaced them because, you know, I replace every switch that I own, everything that I own, with like my own custom stuff, because I'm that person. I just love to mod and make things. If they had 2 extra buttons here, I think that would seal it. This would be a great controller. Right now it is okay controller, just because with the spacing of this being so big, you've got to reach out all the way here with like your pinky to just like a main action button. So it kind of limits the utility of these outside of fighting games, and in fighting games it's really limited. But like, say I was playing Shadow Generations, and this is like R2 over here, and then so you're kind of pressing like R2 and L2 with like your pinky. Not ideal. It's also, you can't really remap them. There's no custom profiles, at least yet, because Burke says that feature is coming for this particular PCB, but as of yet, I don't think there's any remapping software for it. I'll have to double check on that later. Maybe when you watch this, there will be, which would really make this much easier to like use for a whole bunch of different kinds of games. But as it stands, it costs like about as much as you would pay for like, it costs less than you would pay for like an official hitbox or an official mix box, which is usually what they call like the keyboard and arcade button style layouts. But, you know, it comes with these analog sticks, which are like the same style on like PS4 or PS5 sticks. And that's just like a neat little extra that you really won't see on a lot of arcade controllers, except one maybe later. Okay, this is the Prong Studios Super Slab. If it looks familiar, it's because it's one of these box style controllers, but in a different form factor. I have made my own custom artwork for this. This is a Sadako from the Ring themed artwork. You can kind of see. If you look really closely over here, you'll also see I drew Final Destination on one of the CRTs. I thought that was fitting, since Melee players are like the only people who are going to be using CRTs in this day and age, unless you're like one of those like weird old retro gaming people. It's the same thing but nicer. You can see it's got the rounded edges. It's basically built the same way with the same style of acrylic sandwich and metal, but this, you know, this at the bottom is metal. The screws are nicer. They're not less prone to scripting. They use like the star bit style ones, or torque screws. I'm not sure if it's like a star or torque screw. The buttons up here are nicer. You have like the function buttons for modern systems, because this works is on PC. I think it works on PS4, but it also works on the Switch, so you know, it has all the buttons for that. It has a really nice customizable firmware. It's closed source, but you can just put in a website address the same way as GP2040, and it will get you to the configuration where you can configure all of these for like every profile. Real quick, let me just plug this in, because I want to show this off. I don't really usually want to show off the LED stuff, but like, it is crazy extensive on these things. You can see like when I press the buttons, it like lights up, and they have different color profiles for every single profile. Like every profile, you can have a different color scheme and color reaction, and there's function buttons here to like change the animation settings. It even has an accelerometer in it for some reason, so if you want to like Mario Kart, I'm using tilt controls, you can do that. And there's even like, if you turn that on, there's even a lighting option that like pretends to roll a ball inside along the lights. As if, you know, like there's like a is if there's like a ball inside of there. Just really funny feature. The keycaps are like their own custom keycaps that are like slightly frosted. They're really nice. They feel incredible to slide. It's got an extra modifier key here, and same deal. You can put it on all kinds of different profiles, so you can play full 3D games on this thing. I don't think it's a better experience than a controller, especially since you know, they're missing a little button here. I don't know why everybody in the Smash community is afraid to do WAS and D arrow key style movement buttons. I don't know why you wouldn't. I don't know why everybody decided that the up button should be here on the pinky, but you can change that, thankfully, because that is ridiculous. Yeah, it's just really customizable. Feels really good. Stock. You can get custom artwork for it, and they'll do it for you. If you do decide to do custom artwork, please make it beforehand and have it cut for you by them, because this is one of the most time-intensive and painful experiences to manually cut out the button holes for this artwork, because you do not realize how many more buttons this thing has than anything else, and how easy, like, the construction of this, because they don't have rims, they can just like easily catch on the paper and then get stuck, and your whole controller doesn't work. It's so frustrating. You got to deassemble the whole thing. So please, if you're gonna do artwork, just have them print it for you like a normal person. If you're looking for like a Smash style controller, that's like one of the best ones. It costs the most money, but that's like one of the best options out there. Or again, if you just think that normal leverless controllers have too few buttons for some reason. Okay, remember when I said that, like, there's no other controller, no other leverless that has analog sticks? I lied a little bit. This is the recently released Hot 42 Cosmox X series. Terrible name, impossible to search. Every time you do X series, everybody's like, you just get search results for, do these Hot 42 controllers work on Xbox Series X? And the answer is no, by the way. Not without an adapter. But this is a modular controller. It comes with like a big, huge, well, it comes with a big, huge case. It does not come with the modules. You have to buy the modules, which I did because my curiosity just gets me in trouble. This is the default one. Hot 42 finally made a normal spacing and good-looking aesthetics for their button layout. Thank God. Like, no weird button sticking up here and then another one over here, non-symmetrical. You can unscrew this and it spins around like a couple degrees so that you can get, you know, the perfect angle for your WAS and D style movement keys. There is also the keyboard style ones for people who love the keyboard style keys. I don't know if I'm going to use these much, because I kind of prefer to have the full buttons, kind of like to have that uniform button feel. But that's a personal preference thing. I don't like that they put this button up here. It's just weird to me. I think some people use it for like training mode or something, but I'd rather have another thumb button. You're just gonna hear me say that. These analog sticks are really small, but they are analog sticks. You can push them in. They click too. You have the L3, R3, but they're like Joy-Con size thumbsticks. And if you have any thumbstick toppers or accessories, you can use the Joy-Con sized ones on top of this one to give it a little bit more control, because these are very small and the travel is not very long. If you're playing like Smash Melee or something that like uses like a lot of analog precision, I don't think this is the thing for you. You probably already know that. You might be able to get away with it with like Rivals or Slap City or something, or Smash Ultimate, since it, you know, runs on Switch and PC. These buttons are really nice. I will go in for the MX style ones just because I love to customize my buttons, and there's a lot more variations for the MX style switches. It sounds good. It feels nice. It's really glossy. Within 1 hour of holding this, my fingerprints were all over it, so it looked like shit. and it's a cold piece of metal, so it's really fucking cold whenever I take it out of storage to go play. But thankfully, it's got this really nice textured etched rubber pad on the bottom, so it doesn't move when you're playing it, and it feels nice. It feels nice on your legs. It feels nice on your legs. If you're, you know, playing games in the summer like me, you're just wearing shorts. Yeah, I have some complaints about this one, but it's nice. I think it's, they kind of keep, Hot 42 knocks controllers out like every month, and they really keep missing on the details. This is something that like really looks and initially feels premium, but I feel like a lot of the details are out of order. I wish these buttons were like a little bit further here, because I keep moving my hand and like hitting over here where I think the start button is. I don't know why I think the start button is there. It just feels like that would be the natural place for it. I hope they do different button the big thing with these modular controllers is they rarely continue to support the modules and like add different modules and stuff. And that is kind of like the killer problem for me. Like, you come out with these, you have a couple options, you're like, oh, I can just imagine all these cool options that they're going to add, and then they do nothing with it. And then it's just basically, you're going to leave it in one configuration and never change it out. And speaking of that, I would love to switch between these and like the thumb button configuration, but you have to manually remap this every time you switch it out. You have to change the pin that the LED is on so the LEDs don't freak out, and then you have to disable the buttons that were here, like the mappings for them, and enable the analog sticks and put in the analog stick dead zone values and everything in there. And it feels really jank implementation of this. I've seen like basically nobody talk about the analog sticks on this, because I don't think anybody's like, you know, unreasonable like me and wants to use their leverless on every single game they own. But it's just an ugly implementation of that thing. It is slightly better than the Fightbox one by nature of having multiple controller profiles and stuff like that. If you're really a weirdo, you can map these to that, to like the you know, left and right trigger buttons, and hold those in while you're playing with this and using this side, so you don't have to stretch as much. But yeah, I hope they do more with this. And I also just kind of wish they like remap the pins in a way that you could just take these in and out without having to reset your configuration every once in a while. It really feels like mostly this part feels like a missed opportunity so far, as opposed to just buying something that has a set layout that you like. Okay, next we have the Varmilo FK2. This is a PC only controller for now. It seems like there's some unused buttons on there, so they're clearly intending to use this shell for something in the future, but we'll see. It comes with this huge case as well. Well, I think this case is a little bit nicer than the one that comes on the X series, but don't tell Hot 42 that. And this is the controller itself. Nice injection molded plastic shell. No metal on this one, but that kind of makes it a little bit more portable, especially with the bag. Pretty big spacing on this. Like it's the spacing of the buttons themselves is pretty tight, but you got a lot of wrist space to rest on. The buttons here, they feel good. I wish they maybe spaced them out a little bit, so like you kind of can have like clusters, so you can kind of feel where you are on there. But that's just like a minor complaint. It comes in a bunch of color scheme. Well, okay, it comes in a couple color schemes, pink, blue, and black, as well as like a Sakura pedal and ocean themed one. I wanted the ocean themed one, but this was a review unit, so they just sent me blue because that's probably what they had. I just stuck my own little sticker on there. Buttons, they feel really good. You're not going to be replacing the switches on this though, because they use inductive switches, which are basically, you can kind of think of like Hall effect switches, like similar, but like with different mechanics. Basically, it detects the amount of, I believe it's like it detects the amount of power coming through and as you depress them, it'll like change the voltage or something like that. Look, I don't know anything about electricity. Basically, as you press it, it can detect on like an analog scale where the button is positionally. It does not use that for analog inputs, as you might think. What it uses it for is for rapid trigger. So if you used any keyboards, you know rapid trigger is like the hot new competitive thing in there. Basically, as soon as the button starts traveling back up, you can press it again, and that gives you like really consistent rapid inputs. The big example that I always use is like instant running moves in Tekken, where you have to tap a button 3 times. Sometimes on like a normal leverless, I will tap it 3 times, but I've tapped it too fast and it hasn't released. So it still counts like 2 of the button presses as like 1 button press, because it's like I was basically holding it because I didn't give it enough time between button presses. But here I never had that problem. Very niche case scenario. The real thing that was like useful to me is you can like barely press, you can set the range where this activates, and you can set it so small that basically like touching it, like it's a touch screen, will activate it, but you get the tactile feedback, and like that made my inputs like super consistent, which meant I can only blame myself for my terrible execution. Again, I wish it had the second up button here, but there's not a lot of button customization anyway, so it's like not like I would get a lot more functionality out of it if it did. But if you want kind of like a more basic leverless that still has the 2 extra thumb buttons on the side, this is a good budget, well, budget. It's like $150 or something. It's a nice mid-tier choice for that. We're gonna keep rolling with the ocean theme with the Padbox. I think it's by Arcod. I reviewed this one. There's a full review on there. Again, there's not really a lot of options in terms of like customizing the aesthetics, so I just stuck a bunch of stickers on it. I might have to reapply these because they're very thin paper stickers that are sort of peeling off. But the advantage of this is, if you can already see, there's a D-pad. This is basically, if you have used any of those like fight pad style controllers that like basically are a D-pad with like a long face with 6 buttons on top, it's basically the same deal, you know. But you can put 24mm arcade buttons on here, and you know, you get the whole width of your hand to execute on the button parts, but you get that immediate tactile feedback for the movement. And these use like clicky micro switches. I think they're kind of, I think it uses a custom D-pad solution, which uses like Omron mechanical switches to activate. And there's also like a shoulder button here. I kind of wish there was like another shoulder button beneath it, or like another thumb button here, just to like make it more flexible. But I've used this with a lot of different games successfully, especially if you want to do like a bunch of those beat 'em ups, like the TMNT game or something, or like Streets of Rage 4. It just feels good to kind of have the arcade buttons alongside the D-pad. And if you're a pad player, you might really like it. I know some Tekken players have said like the diagonals come out too easily, and it's like hard to get it's hard to like differentiate between them and like not accidentally get like down forward instead of just forward. I play Street Fighter and other 2D games, so I haven't really had that problem, and I'm not at the level in Tekken where I have noticed that issue. But I think if you see this and you say, hey, that's a D-pad with arcade buttons, and you want that you already know that's for you. It's very small Venn diagram, but if you're in that Venn diagram, like, I definitely recommend this. I really enjoyed playing and reviewing this, and there's a full review if you want, you know, all the nitty-gritty. Okay, next we have the Mavercade 04 OBS MX 04, I think, Key Brawler Mavercade Key Brawler OBS X, OBS MX, something like that. The Key Brawler 04. This is a acrylic sandwich case, once again, with an aluminum bottom and an etched bottom foam, but this motherfucker is heavy. This motherfucker is huge. It's heavy. There's so many layers of acrylic on this thing. It's so well built. It's got these like little things here that you can hang your like hang a strap on. Not like that. Not like that. You can hang like a guitar strap or like a bag strap through. And it's got, by default, it comes with black nylon keys that feel really good. And they have these pill-shaped keys at the end that make it really easy to hit the pinky buttons, to hit the thumb buttons, or just double thumb buttons. They really started selling me on the split layout with this controller, because like you get so much comfort just having your hands to the side. Like usually on a hitbox controller, they're kind of like this, like you point them in, but here you can kind of rest them more like keyboard style. And then they have full-size keyboard switches here with regular spacing. If you're wondering where the buttons of this one went, the keycaps for this one went, they came here. I went a little bit crazy on the customization for this one. I'll show you here. I did all this art myself. I got custom keycaps made to match the color of it. And I even made a custom splash screen themed for it. Crazy good canvas for customizing your leverless. Like if you want a leverless that will not look like anybody else's, this is the one. Like the layout, the pill buttons, the different crazy options that you can get as far as art. It's again a pain to cut all the button holes for this, but if you're dedicated, you can do it. And because this has so many stacks of acrylic, you could do a layered effect where you have like a foreground, background, and middle ground art layer. I almost did that, but this artwork took so long and I wasted so much time doing details on it that I was just like, there's no fucking way I'm gonna do that. Maybe if they make a revision of this thing and I end up buying it, I'll make that my next project. But this took like seriously months. But I love playing on this. Once I got this for a while, this became my favorite Street Fighter controller. I was just like grinding Rashid all day with this thing. And it just feels and sounds good. And again, full-size MX switches, which I prefer. Look, it sounds so good. It sounds so fucking good. Sounds so fucking good. Okay, now you're surely done. What are we on, like 13 controllers? And you said that was like one of your favorite controllers ever. Like clearly that has to be the top tier, right? No, we still got a little bit to go. This is, wow. This is like one of my favorite controllers. This is the Duelpad Zen 16. It is a split layout, WASD, double thumb button layout controller. And it's got this nice little whoop, 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 whoop. It's got this nice little H shape. By default, it comes all clear. I replaced these with some Sitong keycaps that are smooth. I got the matte finish ones that I really like and changed the colors on them. This is art by, they go by Kirby Popstar on Twitter and Blue Sky. I just mashed up some of their Sonic parody characters. I love this thing. Everything I want. Thumb buttons, WASD style layout. 8 buttons here. You know, personally, like I said, I don't really like to use my pinky that much, but you can use these for modifiers. You can play basically any game with this. I did a full review of this thing. I was playing like Devil May Cry 4 and rhythm games and everything, and because of the kind of like the uniform size of the button keycaps and the way that they've kind of laid out everything, they're like so specific and minutely arranged, so meticulously arranged rather. It just, it has like this nice almost symmetry. Like it's not, you know, it's not symmetrical, but you can use another WASD style hand position over here to like do dual analog stick games. You can do it for like 3D action games and rhythm games and fighting games. You can use this for anything, and the best part is like it's like 80 bucks, sometimes like 50 bucks. And like we're talking, when this thing goes on sale, it's in the same ballpark as this, which is like one of the reasons like I will never recommend these motherfuckers again. Like, this is nice, but this is just a better value with like wider spacing, more comfortable buttons, a better layout, and you know it runs the same GP2040 CE firmware as everything else, but it's got a little screen here, and there's a little navigation switch here that you can change the options on without like ever connecting it to a computer. It's like it feels a little bit light and cheap because it's using the same basic, you know, principle for assembly and stuff. And the LEDs on these are like flashbang bright. Just even on the lowest setting, I turn them off because I can't fucking look at my controller when they're on. And if you turn them on maximum and put them on like one of those like roulette or like flashing animations, like you're just basically gonna, I think that'd actually be hazardous to people with epilepsy. So turn off the LEDs. That part sucks. I do keep the bottom LEDs on the lowest setting again. I think they look nice against the table. Let me just plug this thing in. Right? Like, I guess I don't have the LEDs on. But, you know, whatever. Like, while I have this up, like, you see there's like a little screen here that you can go through the menu on. But yeah, hands down, like, it's the right price, it's the right amount of features, it feels good. It's just, if somebody asks for what's a good leverless to start with, I'm just gonna tell them this is it. Like, at least for now, like, this is my favorite, easily. Yeah, well, like, that's my favorite off-the-shelf retail one, but like this is my other favorite. This is top of the line, top tier, the eternal rival, envy tier custom case. I fucking made this myself. Of course I love it, and of course I think it's the best. It has my favorite S2 engine layout. Yes, S2 engine is a reference to Evangelion because I'm a fucking nerd. 6 buttons, the big buttons here, big button here. You can hold those for modifiers and shit. Guess what? Cross yourself. It's got the W, A, S, and D style movement buttons, and it's got that extra jump button here, and it's got the thumb buttons. This is a little bit, you know, I might do it after using the dual pad. The dual pad is so good that I got this afterwards, and I was thought, you know, maybe I'm a convert to the split. This is still a little bit close in terms of how you do your hand position. You know, you got that inward slope instead of like the split. So I might make another one of these with the split hand position. But the thing that I love about the Eternal Rival cases is you can make them in any fucking layout you want. You just email the man, say, hey, I want this layout. He'll consult with you. He'll do it for fucking free, which is crazy as far as options for custom cases. He even did a custom side panel for me with extra Nutrix. Usually use like the Nutrix jack here for like mounting your USB plug. But I got a bunch of them on the side so that I could plug in like headphone jacks, which you plug in extra buttons for, like if you wanted to add like a foot pedal. And I put the spinner on here because it's fun. It's not that useful. It's just fun. And then I have on the side buttons a little dial for start and select, and then like the function buttons over here. I got art on the back. I have cut it because it's acrylic layers. I have cut it so you can see through the frosted glass into the wiring job. I did a really meticulous wiring job, which is a terrible idea since it's mostly covered, but the frosted kind of, it doesn't show up on camera, but the frosted plexi kind of diffuses the LEDs a little bit, so you get a great effect on it. And then, you know, I cut out the the top artwork. And yes, I made the artwork myself again. It took a really long time. And I said, I will never do that again, and then immediately made that ocean controller. That's one of my favorite ones. It's just, it took so long. I put a lot of passion into this, and it feels really good. You can see, it's huge. It's like the length of my fucking forearm in hand. But yeah, if you want to go the custom route and you're not like, you know, drilling holes in a box, this is definitely the way I would go. Just, you have so many options, like these Eternal Rival cases that like you can, if you can think of it, you can make it, and you will have a huge, again, like the Mavericade one, you'll have a huge canvas for kind of making something that nobody else has. So that's almost everything. There's a couple leverless I have that are in storage. I'm going to talk about them real quick. I have a leverless from All Fight Sticks if you want to do custom controller builds, but you don't want to do acrylic. Those are your motherfuckers. US based, all metal construction. They do modular and non-modular versions, so you can disassemble and then put in a new layout if you want as well. I'll put some pictures up on here, but I did like a Kirby and Mega Man build. That was my like very first leverless. Instead of just like at the time there was just like hitbox, and it was like $250 to buy a hitbox, and I was like, well, if I pay like the same amount of money, I can just build my own and like a layout that I prefer. And I was just testing it, but I made it into a whole project. I really like those. And then other ones I have are Snackbox Micro XL, which is a really funny name. And I actually have a Snackbox V2 case. I reviewed the Snackbox V2. I don't think they sell those anymore, but they're coming up with a V3 soon. I really like the V2 because it has like, that's where I got that idea for like the guitar straps and the bag straps that you can carry around. And I did a cool like SBO the Chameleon themed build on that one. If they ever make a V3, you know, it's like a full combination of wood and plexi and 3D printed parts. Oh no, you know what? Sorry, not plexi. They actually use like plastic cutting board material. It's so sick. It feels good. The response on the buttons is a little sharp though, so I hope they do a V3 soon, because I would love to build like a full arcade style button leverless. The Micro XL is probably like one of the best off the shelf like standard layout controllers. I think it's a little expensive for what it is now, especially when you have like all these other options. It's hard to compete, but they're also coming up with like a swirl, which is basically the same concept of like this, but like more, they use thumb domes, they call them, which is basically like the same mechanical function of this, but with like a dome layer on top of it, so you can kind of hit it from like any angle, since you're resting your thumbs a little flatter instead of like, you know, gripping under there. I'm really excited to see what that looks like, but I can tell you that the Micro XL is pretty good, but hard to stay competitive with, and with this many options. But yeah, that's all of them. That's 15 leverless controllers. If over, I don't know how long this video is, forgive me for the production quality on this one, but I figured the information would probably be more useful than having perfect production on it. Anyway, you let me know which one of these you think you would want. If you have any of these, tell me what, you know, your experience with them is, and if you want to send me one to review, I will definitely do that. But for now, those are all the leverless controllers that I have.